And that's all the time we have tonight. Shannon Bream takes things from here. Shannon?
Thank you so much, Laura. Here's what's coming up tonight. Today, host Matt Lauer fired over alleged sexual misconduct. Multiple women now making claims.
We are heartbroken.
American Conservative Union Chairman Matt Schlapp and longtime Clinton advisor Philippe Reines debate. Rose, Weinstein, Lauer, Conyers, who else? What the unfolding scandal means for the media, the left, and Capitol Hill. Plus, tax reform clears another major hurdle.
We will give the American people a big, beautiful Christmas present.
Senator Cory Gardner on how the president's working to win over key GOP holdouts. And the religious right calls on President Trump to fulfill a key campaign promise, demanding answers about why the U.S. Embassy in Israel hasn't moved to Jerusalem. Representative Ron DeSantis is leading the fight to make that happen. He joins us live. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Tonight, new developments in this stunning case of Today Show host Matt Lauer, ousted amid allegations of sexual misconduct with multiple women at NBC. Variety says Lauer gave one unnamed woman at NBC a sex toy and exposed himself to another, then scolded her for not engaging with him sexually. And the New York Times says a former staffer has now told NBC that Lauer summoned her to his office in 2001, had sex with her, and that she complied out of fear of losing her job. Here was the reaction this morning from Lauer's co-host after his firing, but before all these details of the allegations against him went public.
I'm heartbroken for Matt. He is my dear, dear friend and my partner, and he is beloved by many, many people here. And I'm heartbroken for the brave colleague who came forward to tell her story, and any other women who have their own stories to tell.
Lauer is the latest in a string of high-profile journalists, politicians, and celebrities to face accusations of sexual misconduct. Despite persistent rumors about Lauer's conduct over the years, the network says this complaint, the one it got this week, was the first formal filing, and it acted swiftly. Variety says Lauer's lewd behavior wasn't a secret. Quote, several women told Variety they complained to executives at the network about Lauer's behavior, which fell on deaf ears given the lucrative advertising surrounding Today. NBC declined to comment. For most of Lauer's tenure at Today, the morning news show was #1 in the ratings, and executives were eager to keep him happy. So far, no public response from the former anchor. Here in Washington, mounting pressure for the longest-serving member of the House to resign. The Congressional Black Caucus insisting that decision is up to Congressman John Conyers alone. He skipped votes today as the House passed a bill requiring anti-harassment training. This morning, Democrat Kathleen Rice walked out of a party meeting that included Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, and she was fuming.
Let's talk about the big elephant in the room. And that's why I was done with the meeting. I don't have time for conversations that are not real, that are not going to advance the ball for all of us here in Washington. And I, for one, am not going to stand silent, even in the face of pressure from leadership not to.
Congresswoman Rice is part of a bipartisan team of lawmakers introducing a bill that would unmask members who have settled sexual harassment lawsuits with taxpayer dollars. Another day in a scandal that does not seem to be going anywhere. Let's talk about it with Sarah Westwood, the White House reporter for the Washington Examiner, and Tim Graham from the Media Research Center. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
All right, Sarah, there was also a firing news today of Garrison Keillor, someone who has been an institution on public radio. Swiftly ties were cut with him over allegations of impropriety on his part, but he had just authored something about Al Franken under this title, Should He Resign? That's Absurd. He talks about how this came about with Franken. He says 11 years later, a talk show host in L.A., she goes public and there is talk of resignation. This is pure absurdity, and the atrocity it leads to is a code of public deadliness. No kidding. Where are we going in this conversation?
In circles, it seems like. I mean, this is a classic example of the exact kind of hypocrisy that this Me Too moment is exposing, right? That there are men, especially on the left, who have proclaimed themselves to be advocates for feminism, who themselves are being revealed to have engaged in the exact kind of behavior that they've decried in the past. That's exactly why I think the allegations against Senator Al Franken in particular were very potent, because he's someone who's advocated forcefully for women's rights in the past and was found to have violated them in some pretty egregious ways, according to some of the accusers who have stepped forward.
Well, and Tim, this seems to be a really tough kind of split personality decision that people are having to make on both sides. Do they support the person they believe in because they like their underlying policies or the way that they'll vote on Capitol Hill, versus what we're finding out about them allegedly personally and their misbehavior, and being willing to accept that because the ends justifies the means?
Well, it's tough for a voter because a voter's trying to send somebody to Washington that will vote the way they would vote. So if you're a voter in Alabama now, you're like, well, I have the one who would vote the way I would vote, even though I don't think of them as a highly moral person. Or I have the guy that supports everything I oppose. And this is one of the things people can't understand. Why would a Christian conservative support Donald Trump? That's very obvious. Everybody knew what Hillary Clinton stood for, and they didn't want any part of it. So that is a decision we have to make. But I think that the news media, these are people, the shocking thing about all of this is you've never seen a group of people who say that they're, on top of everything and then don't seem to realize they have a sexual predator in their midst for 20 years.
Well, and it's interesting because did we get to this place, Sarah, in this conversation where we're talking about supporting people because of the way we think they'll vote in the end, despite the allegations we may have heard about them, because during, 20, 30 years ago, during the Bill Clinton scandals when he was president, there were top name feminists who were out there writing op-eds and supporting him in the media saying, listen, this is a guy who's going to be good for women in the end. So this is his private life. It doesn't enter into what he does publicly.
It's really interesting because just before we started to have Democratic politicians accused of engaging in this kind of sexual misconduct, there was a reckoning with the way the left protected Bill Clinton going on within the Democratic Party. And that seems to have come to a screeching halt now that Congressman Conyers and Senator Al Franken have been accused. Democrats were examining whether it was proper, for instance, to dismiss credible allegations from people like Juanita Broaddrick or Kathleen Willey or any of the other women who accused Bill Clinton of misconduct, simply because Bill Clinton was a pro-choice Democrat, that he was someone who was going to advance ostensibly pro-women policies from the White House. Now we have seen that conversation all but disappear because it implicates the Democrats who are protecting currently sitting Democratic politicians who are accused of the same sort of behavior.
Tim, very quickly, we're just about out of time, but today there was a press conference involving a lot of those accusers of former President Clinton, and apparently the networks didn't show up.
It's just a pattern we've seen since 1994 when Paula Jones first came forward. They all sat there in February of '94, and they looked at each other and said, do we have to cover this? And they all decided, no, we don't have to. And that kind of mentality remains.
Well, apparently they didn't show up at the National Press Club today. We'll talk more about that coming up. Sarah and Tim, thank you both for your time. Good to see you tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, today journalists on Capitol Hill confronted the head of the Congressional Black Caucus about why Congressman Conyers still has a job and Matt Lauer doesn't. By the way, the House's third-ranked Democrat James Clyburn was there as well, so listen to their responses.
Other men in other industries have faced similar accusations and gotten out of the way, resigned, stepped down far faster than he has. Right?
No, you would have to give me some examples.
Harvey Weinstein, Charlie Rose, Matt Lauer.
I don't think they... Who elected that? Right.
Let's talk about it with Fox News politics editor Chris Starwell. What do you make of that? Who elected them?
Well, it's true up to a point. Look, John Conyers is not going to serve out his term in Congress. He has been trying to appease the beast, step down from your committee chairmanship, say you're not going to run again. He's not going to finish out this term.
You don't think?
No way. He's probably not going to finish out this week. This is pretty well done. But there is a point here. The private sector, we can act swiftly. The executives at NBC acted much as executives at Fox once acted when dealing with similar problems. Done. Get out. Go. Pack your stuff. Here's your box. That's the way the private sector works. These are elected people. For example, if the people of Alabama choose to elect Roy Moore, he's coming to the United States Senate. Whatever he has done wrong in his life, whatever that says or does or bears or brings, he will be the democratically elected choice of the people of Alabama, and he gets a seat in the United States Senate. And so that goes for people who commit impropriety, even when they're in the seat. The franchise of the people who sent them to Washington is what keeps them there.
Yeah, this really is about voters, as you said. I mean,
Sure.
that is it's not just the court of public opinion, that's part of it, but it's actually going to the ballot box and making a decision. A piece today in the Federalist was talking about this idea of due process and how we have to be careful because you don't want one accusation to take any one person out, any of us, somebody steps forward. I mean, there has to be some kind of accountability and conversation about exactly what happened. But while voters are heading to the polls, what they're hearing is what's in the media, and they have to make their own gut check decisions on this.
Well, for more, there's been plenty of due process. This is not.
Not in the sense of a court of law.
No, right, exactly. What I mean is, for the voters are like jurors. We have voters and jurors play very similar roles in our republic, which is they bring their whole selves to the act of making their decision, and we count on them to acquit their offices with whatever respect and dignity that they can bring to it. So if you are, in fact, a voter in Alabama, you can say, all right, I've seen the evidence in front of me. I think he did it. I think he's guilty of these things, but I'm still going to vote for him. Or you can say, I've seen what's in front of me. I don't believe it's true, and I'm going to vote for him. You can choose whatever you want. Due process is for people who are already in position. Mm-hmm. Roy Moore doesn't have a job. Roy Moore just is trying to get a job. For people who are already in jobs, yeah, you have to have due process. But the due process in the House and in the Senate is pretty simple. It's 2/3 plus one to be expelled.
Well, and voters and lawmakers alike have these decisions to make. I mean, in this piece in the Federalist, they went on to say this and note an example that has been around for decades, saying this of Senator Ted Kennedy. He said he left Mary Jo Kopechne to drown while he first called his lawyer, then took a nap after extricating himself from the car. He drove off a bridge with her in it at Chappaquiddick. He went on to win numerous re-elections, honored by his colleagues as the, quote, lion of the Senate.
Right. And if the people of Massachusetts wanted him, they can have him. If the people of Alabama want Roy Moore, they can have him. If the people of Minnesota want Al Franken, they can have him. John Conyers could run for re-election if he wanted to, and if the people of his district wanted him, that's fine. It is important, in fact, that we do not set standards for, if we started setting decency standards for serving in Washington and
Capitol Hill, like clean out the offices.
The traffic would be extra light. It would be extra light.
Like Tasmanian devils whipping up and getting out of there.
Exactly. So if Alabama wants a Ted Kennedy of its own, they can have one. They can have whatever they want because they're the voters and it's their franchise that counts here, not what the rules say or what due process is.
Yeah, and if he is seated, then it does turn into an issue for the Senate to decide as a body on its own. So anyway, we'll stick around. December 12th, we'll be here before we know it, and lots of pontificating before then. You can't wait for election night. Chris Darwell, good to see you.
You bet.
Thanks for coming in. All right, they are burning the midnight oil on Capitol Hill tonight, trying to get the Senate's GOP tax bill across the finish line. So we're now in this special 20-hour window during which the Senate is expected to actually finish the bill. Then it could go to a vote before the end of the week. President said, why not do it today? That's just 2 days away, but there are potential roadblocks coming from both sides of the aisle. Here to explain, our very own Ed Henry. Good evening, Ed.
Shannon, great to see you. They passed the first test by getting this motion to proceed to the actual debate to move forward. And it's coming in part because you had the president yesterday on Capitol Hill, today in the heartland in Missouri, giving a speech, really more directly making a sales pitch in a way we did not see him do on health care reform, to the point that I'm picking up new information tonight from some top Republicans that they think even John McCain in the end may get on board, but they're not quite there yet. Here's how it played out today. The president's sales pitch, getting some reluctant Republicans to move over to the yes column on this motion to proceed. That was for everyone from Susan Collins and Bob Corker to Steve Daines. Daines today saying that the Democratic talking points that this will only help the rich are false, tweeting in part, quote, I was able to secure more than $60 billion in tax cuts for Main Street businesses. These Main Street businesses will be able to provide more jobs and higher wages in Montana and across the country. That was after direct conversations with the president. But with little margin for error, there are still concerns about McCain, who voted against the Bush tax cuts of 2001, 2003. He said then it was too skewed to the rich. He was worried about the debt. And remember, McCain has been a thorn in the president's side, saying this year the Russia probe is reaching the scale of Watergate in the continuation of a feud dating back to the campaign, when Mr. Trump said he preferred war heroes, quote, who weren't captured. Remember, McCain this summer, shortly after brain cancer surgery, gave a dramatic thumbs down, you see it there on the Senate floor, to a bill that would have repealed and replaced Obamacare shortly after the president lobbied him by phone. McCain telling Esquire in a piece published this week, quote, "I don't agree with the way he's conducting his presidency. Obviously, he's an individual that unfortunately is not anchored by a set of principles." McCain adding, "I don't think there was any doubt about his views towards me, but I'm a loyal Republican." And I can tell you the president today, though, made clear in his sales pitch in Missouri that he thinks McCain and some other wavering Republicans will come on board. Watch.
It's complicated stuff. It's not so easy. But we had an incredible session yesterday. And I think we're there. That's why I said, can we do the vote today? What do I know? I'm a business guy. Can we do the vote now? Well, they said, how about Friday? I said, I don't want to wait till Friday.
And they're still trying to work out some of the key details. The president wants the corporate tax rate lowered from 35% to 20%. There are other Republicans tonight talking about maybe making it 22% so they can use some of that extra money for other tax cuts. There's a lot of bargaining left to go, but the president is starting to clear hurdles tonight that suggest for the first time he could be on the verge of a big victory on tax cuts, Shannon.
Yeah, it's been 10 months in the making, and he needs it, and the GOP folks on the Hill need it as well. All right, Ed Henry, thank you very much. Well, it looks like Wall Street's feeling good about the prospect of tax reform. The Dow rising 103 points to close at an all-time high this afternoon, just shy of 24,000 points, as Wall Street continues to bet on a strong economy. But even before the closing bell rang, President Trump chimed in on Twitter, quote, "Looks like another great day for the stock market. Consumer confidence is at record high. I guess somebody likes me." They put in parentheses, "my policies." Next, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley mincing no words in response to North Korea's launch of a powerful new missile, where she is pointing the finger tonight. Senator Cory Gardner of the state of, well, he's in Colorado, but he's from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as well. He joins us live. Later on, testifying before lawmakers, one California Democrat tells them there are, quote, rapists in the state capitol, and asks why no one is doing anything about it. Trace Gallagher has details when we return. It's hard to ignore that the current wave of scandals began with Harvey Weinstein and have swept up mostly left-of-center men, from entertainment to politics. In a piece for National Review, Jonah Goldberg writes tonight, quote, "Is it crazy to think that there's a problem specific to liberalism at work here? Perhaps there are a lot of liberal men who think they can buy indulgences by towing the party line on equal pay and Title IX." Here to discuss, Philippe Reines, former senior advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and Matt Schlapp, who's chairman of the American Conservative Union. Welcome to you both.
Great to be here. Thank you.
All right, Philippe, I'll start with you. What do you make of that quote from Jonah, basically saying, a lot of these guys can get away with stuff because in the end, the left will say, well, their votes line up more with the interest of women, so we're going to look the other way.
Well, I'll answer his question. Yes, it is crazy to say that liberal men and somehow either suffer from this or get away with it more. I think we've seen, if we just look at what's happening right now, we have a Senate candidate in Alabama who pretty much has been accused of doing as much as the rest of everyone else combined right now. So I think that's overly simple to say that. I'd like to think that both parties take it equally seriously, and that this isn't fundamentally about partisanship, that this is about behavior that's intolerable.
But do you think 20, 30 years ago that then President Clinton did get a pass? Because there were people like Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan speaking up to say, like, he's still in our corner.
Right. Well, I can't speak to what they were thinking. Obviously, I took issue with something that a United States Senator sitting now said. I think there's a big difference. We're just learning of these accusations, whether it's Senator Franken or whether it's Senate candidate Roy Moore, or whether it's John Conyers. President Clinton, not only was it long ago, but President Clinton had what I would call a reckoning. I would say he had just about as big of a reckoning politically as you can have. The idea that
by serving 2 terms as president and then becoming a celebrated world leader and making millions of dollars through the Clinton Foundation and speeches?
I mean, he was impeached, and he had $70 million of taxpayer funds spent on looking into these accusations.
And he admitted wrongdoing, and he paid a massive fine, and he was disbarred. So there's no question that Bill Clinton was guilty. Let's face it, this is the cardinal sin for the left and for Democrats. Because he was pro-choice, because he was progressive on a lot of these questions, people like Gloria Steinem and others looked the other way. And I think this is a real reckoning for the left. And when they said, we got to move on, it's just about sex. we have to get on with the nation's business. These were lies. This taught American women that if you come out, you will be attacked, and you will be attacked by the people who think they're the advocates of women. I think we have to get through this moment. We have to live through it all over again. Thank God we're not living through it with a Hillary Clinton presidency, because it would be even worse.
Don't trigger Philippe. I mean, we're going to stay on. We're going to stay on track here.
But
so
they
let's
have
not
to.
talk about
The country has to deal with what happened back in the Clinton administration in order to deal with what's going on today.
I don't think it's either or. I think if you want to look back and think about that, we can. If you want to look what's happening now, but it is too convenient politically to say that we are not going to do the right thing with Roy Moore, or frankly with President Trump,
or Conyers. Or
both sides of the aisle.
Look at them all.
Both sides of the aisle have to be consistent. I mean, nobody can take the moral high ground if they're not willing to say it applies to their own people. I mean, that's something we can agree on.
That's right. And I think the second thing I hope we can agree on is when politicians use their office, right, to badger and bully these women. The power of government, our taxpayer money, like with this slush fund and other things, what the Clintons did with their office, I think that's particularly egregious.
Across
and I think
party lines, that's unacceptable.
That's exactly right.
It's just unacceptable.
But
I want to play something today and then get your reaction, because several of the women who did accuse Bill Clinton, then president, of various things, including rape, they held a press conference today at the National Press Club, and apparently a lot of folks didn't show up. Here's what happened.
I was hoping to see an NBC camera today. I thought it would be appropriate if an NBC cameraman and a reporter came today. But are any of you guys with NBC? ABC? CNN? CBS? PBS?
All right, I wasn't there, so I don't know, but I'm told that no hands were raised by any of those outlets. So, Philippe, if we're really going to get this right now, why wouldn't they be there?
Well, I'll tell you who else wasn't there. Representative Barbara Comstock was invited because she has made comments in the last couple of weeks, understandably. She chose not to go, and I think probably you're a fan of Barbara Comstock.
Well,
I know your
hearing
organization.
From her office that there may have been some other kind of conflict.
Well,
so, but let's talk about the networks not showing up.
I don't think
not covering that story.
I think it's crazy to say that networks are ignoring. As someone who watches CNN and MSNBC,
did you see any coverage of this press conference
all it
today?
was Matt Lauer all day. The liberal fake news, as President Trump calls it, was the sole topic of today. You couldn't find any news about North Korea if you tried. So I don't think that's true. It's possible.
Oh, you'll have
Maybe
news about North Korea on this show. That's coming up.
Look,
but Matt, get your word in there.
I think that what needs to happen on these questions of Juanita Broderick and Kathleen Willey and these women who were victimized by Bill Clinton, it's a very simple thing. Bill Clinton's an old man now. Apologize. You acted criminally. You acted inappropriately. Apologize to these women. I think it helps the whole country get over some of this stress of all of these scandals if people will just stand up and admit they did the wrong thing.
Well, and most of this has not been adjudicated in a court of law, to be fair, on these claims against him.
He admitted that he was not honest.
Yeah,
and he was disbarred because of his dishonesty.
But if we're going to say criminal, we need to be fair that this hasn't been adjudicated.
Had their theoretical day in court. Their accusations were looked at by Ken Starr, including Ms. Broderick.
Well, and
there is
today,
a difference between an accusation not being proven and not being taken seriously.
He was the Attorney General of Arkansas. He raped a woman, and
he did not.
She felt like she couldn't come forward because he was the law.
Ken Starr, as you know, interviewed Ms. Broderick and determined that there was nothing to investigate. I think we can all agree that Ken Starr was not a fan of Bill Clinton.
As you know, the statute of limitations had long since passed, and there was nothing he could do.
Ken Starr might have found a way.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. But please come back soon.
I think we need our own show.
Well, I'd like to be a part of it, so come back and be part of my show.
Tomorrow night we'll be debating President Trump's behavior with women.
All right, we're going to be selling tickets. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Could House investigators start playing hardball with the Justice Department and the FBI in the search for answers over who funded the dirty dossier and whether or not it was used to justify spying on members of the Trump campaign? Plus, we'll tell you what you need to know about the woman behind those controversial videos retweeted by the president today. We've been investigating her and her claims and her group. Our findings next. Tonight, our James Rosen has obtained a critical internal House memo reporting that a senior counsel for the House Intelligence Committee urged Republican Chairman Devin Nunes 3 weeks ago to pursue contempt of Congress citations against the Department of Justice and the FBI. House Intel accusing those agencies of withholding key documents and an FBI witness in the Russia probe. DOJ says tonight it has supported congressional investigators in a number of ways and held briefings with them. In a statement provided to Fox News at night, the DOJ says, quote, the members who have chosen to attend those briefings should have a clear understanding of the facts surrounding this matter. Well, earlier tonight, President Trump tweeting apparently after he saw James Rosen's report, the House of Representatives seeks contempt citations against the Justice Department and the FBI for withholding key documents and an FBI witness, which could shed light on surveillance of associates of Donald Trump. Big stuff. Deep state. Give this information, all caps, now. Well, as the president tries to rally his troops on another front, trying to get the GOP Senate tax plan passed, there are around-the-clock negotiations, not across the aisle, but within the party, including dinner tonight, a big one at the vice president's house with some key players. After the failure to get health care done, pressure is mounting this time around. So will it happen? Colorado Republican Senator Cory Gardner joins us live. Good to see you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so everybody is kind of working late, trying to get this thing done. The president said today, why can't we just vote today? I mean, there are some procedural things you have to get done in the Senate, but the key question is, do you get to 50?
I think the point he's making is let's get this done. Let's get this done soon, because the sooner we can bring relief, real relief to the American people, the sooner we're going to see wage growth, economic growth, and opportunity grow for the American people.
But you know there are a number of groups out there, folks on the left of the aisle, other so-called nonpartisan groups who are putting out estimates that say this isn't good for the American people. It's good for rich people, and it's bad for middle and lower income people.
Yeah, you've got some economists out there putting out documents that people like Kevin Hassett, very well-respected economist, has said is scientifically indefensible, the kinds of works and studies that are being put out there. What we know is this. In Colorado, the net income, the net after-tax income increase is going to be over $3,000 for the people of my state. As a result of lowering the corporate tax rate, we could see wages grow as high as $4,000 under some estimates. Bottom line is, people are going to be better off at every income level under this bill than they were today and before the passage of this legislation.
All right, you know you've had a lot of concerns by members within your own party who talked about the impact on the deficit. They say, listen, when did we get so comfortable spending all this money and we're not offsetting it? There have been all kinds of concerns about including triggers that would then cut back some of these things, raise, increase taxes if the predictions aren't working out correctly. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana has had something to say about this today. Let's play that.
One trigger, which I don't like, would say if we don't hit our numbers, there would be automatic tax increases. I don't like that. There's another alternative, which I like much better, which says if we don't hit our numbers, we'll have automatic spending cuts in terms of deficit, in terms of discretionary spending.
What about that? What about the side of this equation that has to deal with cutting the enormous federal spending? People don't like sending their tax dollars here because they see what happens with it.
That's exactly right. What I believe we ought to do is let the American people keep more of their money, let American businesses keep more of their own money, let them invest where they think it's smart to do so. They're going to make better decisions than Washington can, and we're going to see economic growth as a result. Look, I'm not a big fan of triggers or tax snapbacks in effect. That's what we're going to see. This is a snapback tax. I don't think that's a good idea to put in place in this bill. Let's let the American people keep more of their own dollars through this. Let's see that growth, the economic growth that's projected between 3 to 4 to 5% GDP growth. That's going to more than fill any deficit concerns as a result of that new revenue coming back to the federal government.
Okay, so as we're watching and waiting now, a lot of speculation that this could once again come down to Senator John McCain being the deciding vote. Do you have any bead on where he is tonight?
I think this is going to be a very serious vote for all of us, and I think Senator McCain's going to make the right decision for Arizona, for the people of this country. I believe he will come down on the right side of this issue. I don't think anybody can say they speak for John McCain, but we're going to obviously make sure that everybody has the information they need to do what's right for this country, and that's to get Washington out of the way, let America get back to work.
I want to ask you about North Korea as well, because we've discussed that before. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley had this to say at an emergency meeting today after their launch yesterday.
China must show leadership and follow through. China can do this on its own, or we can take the oil situation into our own hands.
About the trade between North Korea and China on oil, are they doing enough?
Well, I'm going to commend Ambassador Haley for making this strong statement. Look, if China wants to be a responsible global power, then they have to act responsibly toward their neighbor that is now threatening a global nuclear war. That means that China has to cut off oil, has to cut off trade. They're responsible for 90% of trade with North Korea. China has to simply do more. It's not enough to say that, yeah, we'd like Kim Jong-un to stop. It's not enough to send a delegation and then just say, hey, we've told them we need to stop. It's not enough to cut back on some coal imports imports from North Korea into China, or some, they need to stop it all. They need to cut off oil. We need a global economic embargo. We need to stop the slave labor that's coming out of North Korea. We can and should do more. Look, the doctrine from this president is maximum pressure, not maximum cajoling. We need to make sure that we apply that maximum pressure not just on the Kim Jong-un regime, but its enablers like China as well.
Well, the president called Kim Jong-un a, quote, sick puppy today. That didn't go over well in the rogue regime, but we can imagine it would. Senator, thank you so much for coming in. Good to see you. All right, next up. Did you see him today? Straight out of the White House, the president retweeting some highly controversial, unverified video. The reaction went viral, so we decided to investigate what we found out about these videos in this group next. From Capitol Hill to a state capitol today, where powerful testimony is shaking the Golden State. A Democrat lobbyist testifying inside the halls of power, quote, "We have rapists in this building. We have molesters among us." What's that all about? Trace Gallagher joins us from Los Angeles with more on the shocking story. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Shannon. You know, we should note that in 25 states, at least 44 lawmakers have been accused of sexual misconduct. 32 of those lawmakers either resigned or were forced out. But of the 24 states involved, California is where the accusations are rampant. And now a California State Assembly panel is hearing victim testimony about the devastating consequences of sexual harassment. State lawmakers are also getting excoriated for failing to identify serial predators. That lobbyist you mentioned who said there are molesters among us is Nancy Pelosi's daughter, Christine Pelosi. Another lobbyist claims that when she was a 23-year-old staffer, a lawmaker trapped her in a bathroom and masturbated in front of her. Pamela Lopez says to this day she has not named the man because she fears retaliation that could hurt her ability to make a living. Watch.
We experience this. We start to crumble under the pressure of feeling unsafe.
This hearing is the first opportunity for the legislature to say, in a very public way, whatever's going on is unacceptable.
The flood of California accusations began in mid-October in the wake of the Harvey Weinstein allegations, when the cry of "Me Too" became "Us Too." More than 140 women, including lawmakers, lobbyists, and Capitol staff, wrote an open letter denouncing a pervasive culture of misconduct in state government. The letter reads in part, quote, "Why didn't we speak up? Sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of shame. Often these men hold our professional fates in their hands. Our relationship with them is crucial to our personal success." So far, 2 California lawmakers have been forced out, but more names are expected to come out. And there are now 6 women who work in Florida's state capitol that claim the state Senate's powerful budget chairman has inappropriately touched them without their consent. Republican State Senator Jack Latvala, who's also running for governor, is being accused by women from both major parties. Latvala denies those accusations. Shannon.
Stories will continue, I have a feeling. Trace, thank you very much. Yep. Well, a transatlantic back and forth tonight following some retweets by President Trump. The unverified videos he retweeted come from a controversial group across the pond, and the presidential retweets prompted a response from Prime Minister Theresa May's office saying that Mr. Trump was in the wrong. Well, in a tweet, the president says this: "Theresa, don't focus on me. Focus on the destructive, radical Islamic terrorism that is taking place within the United Kingdom. We are doing just fine." Well, President Trump there apparently sent that to the wrong Twitter handle. So if you're going to reach out to the British Prime Minister, use @Theresa_May. I understand that's the right one. Kristen Fisher joins us now to update us on the videos and the group that started this whole thing. Wow.
It's fascinating. You know, where these videos came from, they came from the Twitter account of a far-right British politician, Jada Franson, who's the deputy director of the ultra-nationalist party Britain First. And what they want is to end all immigration and outlaw Islam in the UK. Now, Franson's already been convicted of a hate crime, and she's currently on bail, facing 4 more charges of causing religiously aggravated harassment. Well, about 24 hours ago, she tweeted a series of videos purporting to show Muslims committing acts of violence. The first claimed to show a Muslim migrant beating up a Dutch boy on crutches. Well, that turned out not to be true. A Dutch prosecutor said today that no one in that video is either a Muslim or a migrant. The second video claimed to show an Islamist mob pushing a teenage boy off the roof and beating him to death. Now that did happen, but it happened in Egypt back in 2013, and the teenager killed was also a Muslim. And then the third video claimed to show a Muslim destroying a statue of the Virgin Mary. Now that appears to be legit, so one's real, one's kind of real but taken out of context, and the third is just flat out false. Shannon.
Okay, so President Trump apparently tweeted all three of these this morning, retweeted them.
Right.
Talk about what we heard then from the British Prime Minister.
Yeah, well, she was not happy about this at all. Her office put out a statement that said it was wrong for the president to have done this. Quote, Britain first seeks to divide communities through their use of hateful narratives which peddle lies and stoke tensions. At the same time, civil rights groups around the world are accusing the president of inciting violence against Muslims. But the White House is defending the president's decision to retweet those videos. The press secretary said today that it doesn't matter if the videos are real because the threat is real.
I'm not talking about the nature of the video. I think you're focusing on the wrong thing. The threat is real, and that's what the president is talking about, is the need for national security, the need for military spending, and those are very real things. There's nothing fake about that.
And there's also nothing fake about the fact that Franson is facing some serious jail time, and she's now asking President Trump to intervene personally on her behalf. Shannon.
I did see that appeal that she has made. It's across the pond. I don't know what he can do, but we'll see.
Hey, got to use her 15 minutes to try to get out of jail.
Yeah, well, thanks for digging in and getting us some information about what this is all about. Okay, it could be a seismic diplomatic move by the Trump administration as the pressure grows on President Trump to make good on his promise to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Congressman Ron DeSantis has been fighting to make it happen. Why hasn't it? He's live with us next. Top Democrats and evangelical Christians alike were praising President Trump during the campaign when he pledged to move our embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. But the time has come and gone, and that campaign promise so far is unfulfilled. The White House now coming under pressure from the left and the right alike. Perhaps Vice President Pence is addressing those concerns.
As we speak, President Donald Trump is actively considering when and how to move the American embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis of Florida joins us now. You have been fighting hard on this, and we have another deadline coming this week. What do you think happens?
Well, Shannon, we got to put this in perspective. 22 years ago, Congress passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act to say that the U.S. Embassy in Israel should be in Jerusalem, which is their capital city. Instead, it's in Tel Aviv. And for 22 years, presidents have signed waivers every 6 months saying, oh, it's against our national security interest to do it. The president signed a waiver in May, but he said, look, I'm committed to doing it, and we are going to do it. It's just a matter of when. So I think now would be a good time. I mean, we're still the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. I think it'd be a big issue for people here in the United States, for people in Israel. And what we're seeing in the Middle East, times are changing. 25 years ago, maybe moving the embassy would have caused a big kerfluffle. But you look what's happened after the Iran deal. The Saudis are working with Israel. The Emiratis are working with Israel, Egypt. So the things have changed. So I think recognizing Jerusalem as the undivided capital of Israel is the right thing to do. And I think it would be in our national security interest to do it.
Well, you know, there are a lot of folks who think it wouldn't be good for the peace process, and among them, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Apparently, he gave a letter. This is sourced out through Palestinian media, but apparently he sent a letter to President-elect Trump saying don't do it, and said he gave a warning. He said doing this would have a disastrous impact on the peace process, on the two-state solution, and on the stability and security of the entire region. So how do you answer those concerns?
Well, what do Palestinian Arabs do? They are funding the families of terrorists who murder Jews. That's why we are going to pass in Congress the Taylor Force Act to stop that money from going there. So Abbas, he's never admitted that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. They will not even admit that. So the idea that they want two states to live in peace, they've never believed in that, from the founding of the modern state of Israel and to the president. So I think his warnings, with all due respect, I take that with a grain of salt, given their history of being involved with terrorism.
Do you think the president, though, any of his hesitancy has been because of his great interest in having mobilized his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to be constantly working on restarting the peace process and trying to find solutions? Do you think that's been any of his hesitancy to go ahead and make this change, which he pledged to do?
Well, I think that people in the State Department certainly will say, look, don't do it. It's going to be too complicated. It's just so. But the president, I think the same thing happened with the Iran deal. He certified it at first because they were telling him to. The second time he's like, I don't really want to do this. Okay, I'll do it, but I want a plan. The third time he's like, I'm not certifying it. It's not good. So I think I take him at his word. It's just a matter of when, not if. We just hope that when is soon.
Well, this Friday, another deadline, so we'll see. Congressman Ron DeSantis, always good to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. All right, more trouble for a member of the Clintons' inner circle. Yep, confidant and former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe being sued over an alleged immigration scam. Night court is in session next. Time now for Night Court. We pass no judgment on these stories, but present them to you, the jury, for your consideration. Well, Virginia's Democratic governor and possible 2020 presidential hopeful Terry McAuliffe could be in serious trouble. Reports tonight that McAuliffe and Hillary Clinton's brother, Tony Rodham, are facing $17 million fraud lawsuits by Chinese investors. Now, these investors allege that they were lured into a cash for green card scam to ensure their immigrant visa applications would go to the top of the pile, thanks to McAuliffe's and Rodham's political connections. We'll track that. Well, the Grammys coming under fire for a lack of diversity over the years. Well, this year, it turns out they're excluding a gender and a race in a category that's pretty important. Not a single white male artist or group has been nominated for Album of the Year category. The nominees are Jay-Z, Bruno Mars, Lorde, Childish Gambino, and Kendrick Lamar. And none of the 5 tracks nominated for 2017's Record of the Year were by white artists. Maybe the pendulum swinging backwards again in the other direction. And there's a new princess in the Magic Kingdom. New episode of Disney's Star versus the Forces of Evil. Lead character Marco Diaz goes undercover as Princess Turdina to help save a group of princesses from a bad guy. When Princess Turnita is revealed to be a boy dressed as a princess, one of the rescued muses says, what does it matter if he's a boy? Another says, he can be a princess if he wants to. All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Most watched, most trusted, and most grateful that you spent the evening with us on Fox News at Night. Good night from Washington. I'm Shannon Bream. Our next news starts early, 4 a.m. Don't miss it for Fox and Friends First.